Hi, so far we have a bouncing ball in our game, and now we're ready to add some interactivity to our game. In this video, we're just going to have the ability to control the position of the ball based on where our mouse is on the canvas. So let's go and implement that. To detect when the mouse is on the canvas and when we're clicking on it, we're going to have to set some event handlers on our canvas element. The first one we want to do is know when we click on the canvas. So I'm going to add on my canvas element, I'm going to set on mouse down. And mouse down is a function of mouse event to whatever. So here we take our event of type mouse event. And when you get this, let's just println click. So I'm going to go over and switch over here. I can reload, and when I click, we see it clicking. What we want to be able to do is when we're dragging our mouse around on our canvas, when we have a proper game, that's going to allow us to drag the ball and let go of it to launch the ball into the world. So what we want to be able to do is when we click and then we move, then we want to, for our test, change the position of the ball. So what I'm going to do is, so that we know when we're dragging, I'm going to store a variable here, dragging, which is going to start out to be false. When we get a mouse down, I'm going to set dragging to be true. So now we are dragging. And now I'm going to set a canvas on mouse move. And here we're going to handle when we're dragging. So first of all, I can just println the X position of the mouse when we get a mouse move. And if we reload, we see that we're getting it even when we hover over our canvas. So that's why we have this dragging. What we're going to do is, if we're dragging, that means the mouse was just clicked, then I'm going to print the client X. So now we'll see that it doesn't print when I'm hovering, but when I drag, then it prints. But one thing we'll notice is that it continues printing even when I let go of the mouse. So now I've let go of the mouse, but even as I move, it still prints. So you have to add one last handler here to our canvas element, which is on mouse up. So when our mouse is released, we're not dragging anymore. So we're going to take our event and we're going to set dragging to be false. So now we should have our proper drag behavior implemented. So right now nothing's printing because I'm not pressing down. Now I'm dragging, and as soon as I let go, it stops printing. So now we have our dragging implemented. Right now we're just setting all of our handlers directly in our main object. Eventually, when we load different types of boards, we'll initialize these whenever we load a new board. But for now, we're just going to do this here. And the last step is setting the position of the ball to be where we clicked. First, to do that, I'm going to have to go to sprite. Right now, when we have a physics circle, it's dynamic by default, which is what it allows it to bounce. But for this example, when we're dragging it around, we don't want it to fall as soon as we move our mouse and stop that. So we're going to set this to be static. So now it'll just be fixed to the position that it's set to. So now if we reload, it just fixed there. And the other thing I'm going to do, or actually we don't need to do that, what we need to make sure we're doing though is that circle and box need to be separate. So what I'm doing right now is I have circle of type a sprite and box of type a sprite, and then I combine them in this sprites. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to move box into this because we're not going to need to configure our box, but we're going to have our ball be rendered separately from the rest of the sprites. So right now what I'm doing is I'm rendering each of the sprites. So if we reload, we won't see our circle because now our ball is not one of the sprites. What I want to do is I want to do ball.render with our canvas context, and this will allow us to get better control over our ball. So now that we have our physical ball, now we know this is a physics circle, what we want to do here is set the location of the circle to be where we clicked. So we can do ball.body, so we're going to grab the physics body, and now we created the state and position here, and I'm just going to set position to be a new physics.js vector. And physics.js vector takes x and y. My x is going to be client x, which gives us the x position, and our y is going to be client y to get our y position. Now if we reload it, we can now see that as we drag our mouse around, our ball moves with it. But our ball isn't being centered where our mouse is. It's actually somewhere below that. Why is this happening? Let's try and... So one thing we'll notice here, first of all, is that our x is correct. The ball is centered horizontally with our mouse location, but our y is not correct. So let's print the client y. Now I can reload. So now we're printing the client y, and one thing we notice is that even when we get off the canvas, it's not 0 here. It's actually something like 80 instead. The reason this is happening is when you have a client position, that gives you the position for the whole screen. The reason this wasn't affecting x is because our canvas is all the way to the left, but it isn't all the way to the top because we have this heading here. So what we need to do is when we're setting this, we need to subtract how far from the left and top our canvas is. So we're going to take our canvas, and to get how far from the left and top it is, all we have to do is do offset left for x, and I'm going to do this on a new line for y. Actually, I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to move this down here. And then for y, we subtract the offset top. So this is showing how far from the top and left is our canvas actually positioned. Now if we reload, we get our circle moving around centered with our cursor. Now we can go ahead and get rid of that println because we don't need that anymore. And we can reload, and we have our interactivity. So that's it for adding interactivity to our game. Now, all we're doing right now is just moving around a ball. It's more of a demo of the interactivity than actually doing something useful in the game. In the next video, we'll move on to having a slingshot in our game where we pull back the ball and then we can let go to launch it into our world. But that's it for this video. I'll see you next time when we add our slingshot.